Part 44. Super Seminary Angel Binghua. Author, Shifeng Si Wang. Chapter 449. Yinga, who was behind the angels, glanced in Hika's direction, and then continued to modify some of the energy drive and conversion data of the flame bombing. A few seconds later, only intensive gunshots were heard, but they were blocked by the female angel holding the shield outside the force field barrier in front of the shield. Countless bullets with flames spraying from their tails were blocked by the force field, and their speed dropped to a staggering level, slowly squeezing forward like a snail. Hika was slightly surprised when he saw this. In addition to their good combat prowess, these 5 invading enemies also had a lot of special gadgets on them. Keep firing, eroding missile preparations. Seeing that the bullets could not break through the force field barrier set up by the angels in a short period of time, Hika immediately ordered to change the attack mode. The bigger and taller special modified warrior who was originally standing behind the ordinary modified warrior crossed over his companions in front and silently opened the erosion missile pod mounted on his armor. Then more than a dozen corrosive combat missiles were fired at the angel's side, and there were only roaring explosions. The blue fire representing the corrosive energy swallowed up everything around the explosion. A few seconds later, Hika saw that the blue flames began to dissipate, and stepped forward with a dagger in hand. Suddenly, a flash of red flashed in the blue flames that had not dissipated. Hika was shocked. As the god of war, with his sensing ability, Crazy called the police on him. Hika fell to the ground from the side of her heart, and almost at the same time, a scorching red bolt streaked through the air, as if dividing the space of the hall into 2 halves. When Hika got up from the ground, her expression was more solemn than ever before, because the power of the burning red spear just now was not an attack that ordinary super warriors could launch. The 3 alloy walls of the entire hall were affected by the hot red metal solution just now, leaving a cut mark more than 1 meter wide. The hot red metal solution fell to the ground, making a sizzling cooling sound. In fact, the most serious losses were among the reformed warriors present, because the attack was originally aimed at them, and only the lower body of the nearly 20 reformed warriors who could not react was left. Suddenly a war blade glowing red thrust forward, and Hika quickly swung his dagger to block it. There was a loud bang, red energy exploded, and a terrifying heat wave swept around. Hika took 2 steps back, with a serious look on his face because it was 11 Ludo who was fighting against him. The enemy who had not been able to confront him head-on before was now able to repel him. This was not a good thing. As Hika, who uses the same source of dark energy, he can also clearly feel that the intensity of dark energy in Ziludo has increased a lot. The red-hot sword in his hand is the best proof. While Ziludo and Hika were fighting fiercely, Yinga and the shield-wielding female angel rescued their companions who were seriously injured and lost the ability to fight. The female angel captain used the gun in her hand to call the names, and each hit could kill a transformed warrior. Just as the fight between the 2 parties was getting lively, the only female projection in the hall who did not participate in the battle suddenly spoke. Her tone was very calm, without any emotion at all. Lord Hika, it was discovered that creatures from unknown civilization invaded the base. Creatures from unknown civilization were discovered to invade the base. As if the projected woman was reminding herself that what she said was very important, the lights in the hall suddenly turned into an ominous red color and began to flicker. Hika saw the dagger holding the downed warblade, and then punched Ziludo on the shoulder, knocking him back several meters away. Before Ziludo could attack again, several reformed warriors stood in front of Hika, raised their guns and pulled the triggers. Ziludo's expression condensed when he saw this, and he immediately raised the war blade in his hand to act as a shield to protect his face. The next second, he heard bursts of impact and explosions. Ziludo was repelled by the dense barrage, and his position with Hika was getting closer and closer. The further away. Finally, when Ziludo saw that there were no fighters, he ducked back into the queue of his companions. For a moment, The two sides stopped attacking each other in a tacit understanding because of the flashing red lights. On the other side, Hika, who retreated behind the reformed warrior, raised his hand and relied on his high-level authority in the research institute to call up the internal monitoring projection. After he saw the picture on the screen clearly, he exclaimed, "How is this possible?" The background of the projected picture is a very wide metal passage. A dozen fast-moving, beast-like blue armored figures are rushing towards the group of gods at the other end holding metal spears and wearing dark golden armor. Soldiers of the Liang army of Hishandeo. None of these were the reasons that made Hika exclaim. What really shocked him was that those figures with wounds all over their bodies, some even missing arms and heads, and wearing broken blue armor, belonged to the Artast Research Institute. The defenders, but they were all killed in the offensive and defensive battle a few days ago. Hika quickly called up the monitoring pictures of other locations and found that most of the situation occurred in areas that had been occupied by the armies of Kamigawa Tiandeo and Gulansi. Hika even noticed an unknown layer of black veins clinging to the wall of the passage in a projection screen, undulating slightly like growing flesh and blood. Those black veins continue to spread forward along the walls of the passages in the research institute. No matter where the corpse belongs, as long as it is attached to the black veins, it will get up from the ground in a few seconds, and walk stiffly forward, but according to Hika's brief observation, the movements of those shambling corpses gradually changed from stiffness to flexibility soon after. There was a flash of silver sword light, and the head of a tall reformed warrior flew up. The crazy expression on his face with a big hole did not change at all. A slender figure, wearing silver-gray light armor that highlights his good figure, and a metal mask and helmet, landed on the ground in a half-crouched posture. The sword with a certain curve in his hand was dripping with something very ominous. Dark red blood. Suddenly, she who was half-crouching suddenly rolled forward, and there was a muffled sound, and a shallow depression appeared on the ground where she was before. Because of the hasty movement, the silver hair that was originally tied together like a silver tassel spread out and fell behind the masked female warrior. I saw that the movements of the reformed warrior who had his head cut off just now did not stop because of the loss of his head. Instead, his movements became even faster. At this time, a slightly panicked voice came from behind the female warrior, "Bright Moon Army, get out of here quickly. These monsters cannot be killed." Turning to look at the several black-haired young men wearing dark golden armor and stomach of the Liang army standing at the corner of the passage behind them, the silver-haired female warrior wearing a mask raised the scimitar in her hand, and the silver energy lit up on the blade. Then the silver sword light reappeared, crossing the knees of the headless reformed warrior. The next moment, the headless reformed warrior's calf and thigh were separated and fell to the ground with a bang. Even so, the headless reformed warrior still crawled tenaciously in a pool of dark red blood towards the silver-haired female warrior who had turned around and left quickly. The scene was extremely horrifying. Super Seminary Angel Binghua. Author, Shifeng Si Wang. Chapter 450. Hika turned off the projection screen, and her face became ferocious, revealing the upper and lower rows of teeth that were clenched together. Her cheeks were bulging hard, as if she was going to crush all the teeth in her mouth. On the other side, Ziluo and Yinga looked at each other, wondering what was going on, and couldn't help but chat quietly in the dark communication. What happened to them? Why did they suddenly stop fighting? I don't know, something happened. I will use flame bombing to open a hole later. Don't hesitate, take this opportunity to get rid of them and leave here. I agree with Yinga. Our mission is to obtain information on transforming soldiers, not to capture this place. We should avoid unnecessary battles if we can. Captain, won't Anya's revenge be avenged? The female angel holding the shield spoke out, her tone gritted, her eyes fixed on Hika at the other end of the hall. The name of the knife-wielding female angel who was severely injured by Hika was Anya. She was a close sister who had worked with her for many years. She had always felt guilty when she failed to rush to the rescue because of her duty to protect Yinga. Now when she heard the female angel, the captain agreed to retreat and subconsciously expressed his opinion aloud. But the words of the female angel captain in the next second made the shield-bearing female angel calm down. Don't be impulsive. Anya has been injured, and now she has lost her ability to fight. If she continues to waste time here, the enemy may take advantage of her. At that time, it was not just Anya but one of the angels who was injured. The shield-bearing angel lowered his head silently upon hearing this, agreeing to the suggestion just made by Yinga. After several female angel warriors reached a consensus in the secret communication, they did not hesitate any longer. Ziluo, holding the warblade, stepped back and began to make temporary calculations for the flame bombing. For a time, the dark energy in the surrounding space quickly passed through the carrier of Ziluo, and was converted into a hot and extremely destructive red energy flow by the gene engine. It began to gather along the energy circuit inside the warblade, and was passed through the micro by the weapon engine. The force field compresses. The movement on the angel's side was quickly discovered by Hika, because as the god of war, his eyes were no longer the pure visual organs of normal life, but could also be said to be alternative energy and optical detection instruments. At this moment, in Hika's sight, countless dark energy flows that distorted the space were rapidly converging on Ziluo, and then turned into a very destructive red energy and poured into the weapon in his hand. Just when Hika ordered the reformed warriors to spread out in all directions to avoid the coming terrorist attack, something surprising happened to him. I saw the one holding a war blade among the 5 enemies who had shown a desperate fighting attitude before, suddenly waved the war blade to the side, and a red sword was about 10 meters long and 1 or 2 meters wide. It flew out with a bang, leaving a long orange-red cut mark on the alloy wall on the side. I don't know if it was a coincidence or not, but most of the alloy door happened to be cut diagonally, revealing a corner of the passage behind it. Before Hika could order the scattered reformed warriors under his command to attack, the figures in silver-gray armor and their companions knocked open the cut passage door, rushed into the passage and disappeared from Hika's sight. After hesitating for a while, Hika finally did not give the order to pursue. Instead, he led the reformed warriors in the hall into an alloy door at the rear. For a while, only the female projection was left in the hall, standing there alone and talking. Surrounded by cold metal. The black unknown substance spread wantonly in the Attist Research Institute, covering the cold and hard alloy walls with a layer of creeping special substance. The corpses left behind by the previous brutal offensive and defensive battle of the Research Institute that both sides had no time to restrain have now become a hotbed for the expansion of the black matter. They are occupying the planetary fortress Research Institute that is being fought over by 3 parties at an alarming speed. The Thunderblade Civilization, Kamigawa Tiendeo, and the Gulansi Army, which were originally in a fierce fight, were rushed by the resurrected undead monsters. After resisting for a while, they found that they lacked the means to completely kill these monsters. They were scattered into the complex passage system in the Research Institute. This undoubtedly greatly reduced the combat effectiveness of the established legions. In addition, it was extremely difficult to kill the resurrected corpses in the narrow environment, which caused the casualties of the 3 armies to begin to rise linearly. Among them, the Liang Army and the Bright Moon Army of the Kamigawa Tiendeo Galaxy, which were equipped with cold weapons, suffered the most tragic casualties. Even the 2 guardians of Kamigawa Tiendeo were trapped in the Research Institute. Naturally, this situation was immediately known to the outside world by the Liang Army warships and the Gulan's people. Through information comparison, they found that this black unknown substance had been recorded in the data of Shenhe Academy. It is a virus with extremely strong mutation and environmental adaptability. They can corrode all living things they touch, destroy their spirits, control and transform their bodies, making them more deadly. The footage sent back from the friendly forces trapped in the Research Institute showed that these viruses were more terrifying than recorded in the data, and could even corrode and transform metal. In the area first infected by the Chaos virus, the environment here shows no trace of the former Thunderblade Civilization Research Institute. The walls are covered with dark brown tough tissue that looks like flesh and blood, emitting a bright red light, and you can vaguely see the continuously beating blood vessels inside. And at some point, tissues ranging from 2 to 3 meters in length, filled with liquid-like insect cocoons, stood on the ground. With a snap, a giant cocoon was broken open from the inside, and a strong humanoid creature covered with a layer of dark cuticles and with a high bulge on its back crawled out, opening its mouth and letting out a sharp howl. Although this unknown creature takes on a human form, its appearance is very different from that of the Kamigawa body. Its face is ferocious and ugly, covered with several pairs of glowing eyes, and its mouth has exposed sharp teeth for easy biting. Its left hand is a sharp claw similar to a human palm, and its right hand is a slender bone blade that turns into an anti-joint starting from the forearm. You can vaguely see the densely arranged muscle groups inside the gaps in the cuticle shell. As the humanoid monster moved, his originally bulging back suddenly exploded, and two jointed limbs with sharp bone spurs at the front were lifted to his shoulders and swayed slightly from side to side. What a terrifying existence! It actually copied my hard work in such a short period of time and even strengthened it on this basis. Those women from the angelic civilization are really wasting their resources. If they could control such power, super warriors, gods of war and the like would be nothing in front of me. A middle-aged man in a white coat with a hint of gray on his temples looked at the data and pictures displayed on several screens in front of him and said to himself enthusiastically, "You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment." Super Seminary Angel Binghua. Author, Shifeng Si Wang. Chapter 451. Just as the middle-aged man was staring at the pictures and data in fascination, a dull sound came from behind, followed by bursts of metal twisting and tearing sounds. "You bastard, I finally found you." Hika violently pulled open the closed sensor doors in front of him with his bare hands, and walked into the observation room where there was only one person. Listening to the slightly heavy footsteps behind him, the middle-aged man turned his chair, his expression having returned from the previous enthusiasm to indifference. "Lord Hika, if you don't organize troops on the front line to defend against the enemy's attack, why are you here with me?" Although they were words of confusion, Hika felt a hint of irony in the middle-aged man's words. Without any nonsense, Hika stepped forward, strangled his neck, pressed him against the console behind him, and asked in a cold voice, "Are those monsters in the institute your work? Don't tell me you don't know anything about it?" The middle-aged man's indifferent smile was slightly painful as his back was pressed against the cold metal platform, but he still spoke calmly. "If I answer that I don't know, will you believe it?" "Of course you won't believe it. How could you, the superior super warriors and gods, change your judgment because of the words of us mortals?" Hika's expression became even uglier than before. Seeing this, the middle-aged man who was being strangled showed a cheerful smile. "Give up. Lord Hika, you are at your wits' end. The fall of Attist Research Institute has become a fact. Even if you are the strongest warrior of Thunderblade civilization, you cannot change this fact. Those guys who don't know what satisfaction is will devour everything here, including you and the reformed warriors under your command. Then using this as a starting point, it will turn into the terror of the entire known universe, and all future civilizations will be shrouded in its shadow. You." The voice stopped suddenly. Hika released his clenched hand, turned and left without looking back, leaving only the body of the middle-aged man whose face was still excited because of Hika's sudden attack, and only his neck was visible. Even the spine was crushed into a puddle of mud with great force, leaving only a trace of bloody skin still connected. 2 hours later, Yinga and a group of angels bypassed all areas where Hika might exist, demolished several alloy walls, and finally arrived at the core of the institute, where the large supercomputer is located. That's enough, no need to go any further, Yinga. The female angel captain spoke out. After hearing this, Yinga stepped forward and took out a palm-sized piece from the armor on her body. The shape was very delicate. The main body was a sword-shaped emblem surrounded by silver wings on both sides. As soon as the badge appeared, it automatically floated into the air, then emitted a faint light, and extended thin blue lines into the surrounding air, just like the energy circuit inside the flaming sword. In the world of data that cannot be seen by the naked eye, ever since the badge appeared, a terrifying flow of information data has begun to grow larger and larger as time goes by. Then this flow of information and data was like a sharp spear, piercing through the information defense network built by the giant supercomputer inside the institute. For a time, most of the facilities inside the institute were paralyzed, and even the automatic defense facilities that blocked the chaotic body stopped working. Although this time was only a short minute or two, the consequences were very bad. A large number of chaos viruses seemed to be commanded by someone, taking this opportunity to destroy the automatic defense facilities of the strike and rushed into the core of the institute area. A bloody massacre unfolded. At the same time, the infection network constructed by the chaos virus also began to spread towards the large energy reactor in the core area of the institute. Its target was obviously the terrifying energy source that could support the operation of the entire institute. As the highest ranking person in the institute, Hika now has a head as big as an ox. Except for his defense line, which can still remain on the defensive, requests for help are coming from other channels. Several senior officers under his command are like babies waiting to be fed, waiting. Follow him to stabilize the situation. The system has been invaded and a large amount of data has been stolen. The system has been invaded. Please relevant personnel to destroy the source of the intrusion as soon as possible. Ignoring the alarm from the base's intelligence system, who has time to take care of this now? Hika endured the depressed feeling in her heart and rushed to the nearest battlefield where she was about to miss. A few minutes later, the sword-shaped badge suspended in mid-air began to shrink into the blue lines spreading around it. After returning to its original shape, Yinga reached out and put it away. Okay, let's get out of here. I always have a bad feeling. The female angel captain spoke up, and the other female angels nodded in agreement. Following the path they came from, Yinga and the other angels planned to find an area near the periphery and violently open a way to leave the interior of the research institute. But when they came to a passage, Yinga and Ziluo, who were on one side of the team, stopped and opened their eyes slightly, staring at the unknown black substance clinging to the alloy wall in front of them. What's wrong, Yinga? Yinga did not immediately answer the female angel captain's words, but muttered to herself. How could the chaos virus break out here? The female angel captain who was waiting for a reply and the shield-bearing female angel who was carrying the injured female angel Anya simultaneously captured the key information chaos virus in Yinga's words. Ziluo, who only showed the slightest look of surprise on the side, saw the doubts on their faces and understood the reason in an instant. The female angel captain and the shield-bearing female angel were high-ranking angels who were assigned to the command sequence of the Holy Left Wing after the physical war. When the chaos virus ravaged the Angel Nebula hundreds of years ago, the two happened to be assigned the task of guarding the Merlot heaven. They happened to miss the war to eliminate the chaos virus-infected areas. No wonder they couldn't recognize the characteristics of the chaos virus-infected areas. Then Ziluo briefly summarized the characteristics of the chaos virus, claiming that he must pay attention to using dark energy to expel the chaos virus infection from his body in time, otherwise it will be corroded and transformed into a monster. After listening to Luo's words, the female angel captain felt that it was too risky to leave the institute along the way she came, so she thought for a moment before speaking out. In this case, we return to the core area, find an area closest to the outside of the institute, and create a passage to leave. The method proposed by the female angel captain is currently the safest and lowest risk method, so Yinga and Ziluo naturally have no need to object. So when the girls turned around and were about to leave, there was suddenly a burst of chaotic footsteps. The girls looked back for a moment, and their expressions changed at the same time. The female angel captain reacted the fastest and shouted, "Run!" This awakened the other angels who had stopped to watch. Yinga followed immediately, followed by Ziluo and the shield-bearing female angel carrying Angel Anya on her back. The moment Yinga and the other female angels left the passage, a group of figures covered in blood and missing heads and hands ran forward with a very devilish pace. Like a smelling shark. Super Seminary Angel Binghua. Author, Shifen Si Wang. Chapter 452. A sizzling sound resounded in the air, and something seemed to be tightening in the gun in the female angel captain's hand. Ziluo, who was standing at the front of the queue, pushed the red blade of the war blade away from the brown bone blade above his head, and followed the trend with a horizontal slash. The chaotic body of a modified warrior who was attacking Ziluo was divided into upper and lower halves from the waist and abdomen. The wound seemed to be on fire, with sparks floating out. At the same time, a red energy bomb the size of a wash basin spurted out from the muzzle of the gun held by the female angel captain, melting all the chaos transformation warriors in a line into ashes, even the alloy wall at the end of the passage. He was not spared either. But in fact, it didn't help much with the current battle situation. The chaos body transformation warriors continued to pour into the passage as if they had spotted a line of angels. In the genetic sequences of these chaos virus-infected bodies, there is a supreme instruction burned in the deepest part, which is to capture powerful biological samples. These angels obviously fit the definition of powerful creatures. Yinga, who was shooting with the particle gun equipped on his arm, saw more and more infected bodies of the chaos virus, threatening to swamp all the angels. He gritted his teeth and put away the weapon and reached out to the void aside, only to see the air rising. Slightly rippling, red lines of energy emerged in the air, forming the outline of a sword. The next moment, scorching red flames rose up in the passage, covering the crowded chaos transformation warriors. The terrifying high temperature caused the air in the entire passage to become violently distorted. Ziluo and the other angels had to turn their backs because the goggles were filled with firelight and they could not see anything clearly. Fortunately, all the people present were high-level angel warriors, so they could withstand this level of high temperature. If there were ordinary Kamigawa people in this passage at this time, they would definitely be roasted or die from dehydration. When the firelight dissipated, the edge of the passage expanded outward in a full circle. Hot metal melting liquid dripped from the top, and black ashes on the floor covered with melt marks were emitting traces of green smoke. Yinga you. As soon as the female angel captain opened her mouth, she was interrupted by Yinga. Captain, now is not the time to continue hiding your identity. The chaos virus will become more and more terrifying as time goes by. Captain, you saw it just now. If we continue to use these non-standard weapons in our hands, sooner or later we will be consumed by the inexhaustible chaos body here. I believe that if the Queen knew our current situation, she would definitely agree to our use of the flaming sword. And if all 5 high-level people died here, it would definitely be a big loss to Merlot Heavenly Court. Hearing this, the female angel captain fell into a dilemma, but she felt that the eyes of the other 4 female angels present were focused on her, waiting for her decision. At this moment, at the end of the passage that had been burnt through by Yinga's blast of flames, tiny black veins began to cling to it. The uncooled metal fluid on the floor was covered with black veins and made a sizzling sound. However, the sound disappeared after a few seconds. The pool of metal solution was forcibly cooled down by the chaos virus using physical means. Yinga raised the flaming sword in her hand, and the sacred inscription on the sword's spine lit up, and traces of scorching energy began to emerge on the sword. Dark energy was like a catalyst, causing the intensity of photothermal radiation stored in the sword to begin to rise rapidly. The female angel captain sighed and said in a broken voice, "Forget it, just listen to Yinga, just expose yourself. I will bear all the consequences. When I return to the Merlot heavenly court, I will personally apologize to the queen." With the approval of the female angel captain, the female angels present breathed a sigh of relief in their hearts, and then turned their eyes to the chaos transformation warriors who started to rush towards the end of the passage again, with a hint of eagerness in their eyes. In the 5th hour after the chaos virus broke out in the Artast Research Institute, the troops that the Sun Army and the Gulans put into the Research Institute had completely collapsed under the impact of the chaos body. Faced with the chaos body, which is extremely difficult to kill and new types of mutations are constantly appearing, the two major civilizations that lack experience in fighting such creatures suffered heavy losses for a while, and the ordinary combat troops in the safe area were gradually withdrawing to the warships. At the same time, Kamigawa Tiendeo and Gulansi also dispatched a special force composed of super soldiers on a small landing ship to rescue a large number of surviving personnel trapped in the research institute. However, these have little to do with Yinga and his group of angels at this moment. After the ban on hiding their identities was lifted, Yinga and his group of 5 high-level angels were unstoppable and easily tore through the pursuit and interception of the transformed warriors' chaotic bodies. If the original Yinga and his group of angels were swordsmen who lost their swords, their combat effectiveness would be greatly reduced. Now that they are holding sharp blades again, they are unstoppable and peerless swordsmen, with no opponent in front of them. Even the angel Anya, who had been severely injured before, was mostly healed with the help of the flaming sword, and the interference of Hika's Leo power on her body was also eliminated. Boom! A violent explosion sounded in the silent hall, and an alloy wall was blasted open from the other end. Yinga and other angels followed closely and entered through the breach. According to the Institute's internal map, after passing through this area, there is a relatively hidden small starport, which is used for emergency evacuation under special circumstances. Hopefully not all the boats there will be taken away when we arrive. But as soon as they entered the hall, Yinga and the other angels suddenly raised their weapons and pointed them in one direction. At one end of the hall, there were chaos corpses on the ground, and to the side were a group of tall figures holding firearms. One of them without a helmet was extremely eye-catching. At this moment, the group of reformed warriors also aimed their guns at Yinga and the other angels, but when Hika saw the weapons that Yinga and the other angels were holding at the moment, Hika's pupils shrank slightly. Flaming sword. Are you angels? Hika was the first to speak out to break the tense atmosphere at the scene. Although it was a question, her tone was extremely affirmative. As an important part of the original Shenhe civilization that experienced physical wars, the Thunderblade civilization has naturally fought with the warriors of the Angel civilization. The most profound impression of Angel civilization is the iconic flaming sword in the hands of high-level angels and the gorgeous and beautiful silver armor. Of course, there are also the unique white wings and beautiful faces of angels. And now that the flaming sword, which is the high-end standard weapon of the Angel civilization, is held in the hands of these armored beings, their identities are self-evident. The female angel captain did not answer directly, which in Hika's eyes was tantamount to acquiescence. However, Hika's look of surprise only lasted for a short moment before it dissipated, and then she spoke with a hint of sarcasm. An angel who claims to be righteous and noble can actually hide his face and act like this. It seems that your justice is just lip service. Because I have been in the hospital recently because of something, I haven't updated it in the past few days. Super Seminary Angel Binghua. Author, Shifeng Si Wang. Chapter 453. You. The previous female angel holding the shield couldn't help but start to argue, but was stopped by the female angel captain. Hika, the power of Leo, the justice of our angels is not something you can judge. Moreover, Your Thunderblade civilization steals Chaos virus samples from the Angel Nebula without permission to cultivate soldiers. How can you talk about the justice of our angels? Hika narrowed her eyes slightly. This female angel did not seem to be a hot-blooded young man, and verbal attacks seemed to have little effect. As for Yinga and Ziluo, they are members of Binghua's faction. Although they also express sympathy for the vulnerable groups under the rule of Angel Nebula, they do not regard the justice order promoted by Queen Keisha as their own needs and must abide by it. Creed, so they did not react much, but were secretly prepared for a conflict to break out between the two sides. Just when the scene seemed to be about to get into a fight because of the two sides' rhetoric, the arrival of an uninvited guest broke the deadlock. Hika. Don't think that you can leave here smoothly just by packing up those unworthy cannon fodder. I am now immortal and everywhere, and this institute is my new body. There's no way you can escape. I want you to watch all your subordinates die in front of you. A man's voice with a hint of madness suddenly sounded in the hall, and a deformed humanoid creature with more than a dozen black tentacles dancing behind it appeared from the darkness. Along with this, there are black veins gradually spreading on the walls of the hall. It is obvious that the erosion area of the chaos virus has spread here. Suddenly, the head of the figure with the tentacles dancing crazily on its back exploded into black pieces of flesh, and the crazy male voice stopped abruptly. The female angel captain suddenly said, "It seems that that person over there is your friend. Why don't you go up and talk to him for a while before shooting?" Hearing this, Hika's face turned ugly, and at the same time, he lowered his left arm holding the gun. The crazy voice just now was the culprit of his failure to leave the institute in time. This situation began to appear after he killed Canster, the research director, without hesitation. Before Canster died, he cloned his own brain through technical means and copied his personality into it. He did not know what method he used to control the chaos virus. However, it may be precisely because of this reason that Canster's thinking has become less calm than when he was a research director, and has become crazy and chaotic. He has been using various experimental materials previously sealed in the core area to delay his retreat. This was also the reason why Hika was encountered by Yinga and his group of angels, so he decisively shot the chaotic body's head because he had heard the sentence countless times. But this time it was obviously different from before, because the sound sounded again after more than 10 seconds, like a repeater repeating the previous paragraph. The figure whose head was blown off had climbed up from the ground at some point, and the black veins on the surrounding walls quickly spread to its location. The bodies of the Chaos Transformation warriors on the ground who had been killed by Hika and others also began to tremble slightly at this time, sliding towards the tangled black matter under the drag of black veins. As more and more bodies were dragged into the black matter, the volume of the black matter began to expand rapidly. But there was only a flash of fire, and a stream of red flames struck the black substance across a distance of several hundred meters. The originally slightly dark hall was illuminated by the scattered firelight. Under the terrifying high temperature, a small piece of the black substance disappeared visibly to the naked eye, but it was filled with new black substance in the blink of an eye. Yinga put down the raised flaming sword, glanced at the chaos virus connected to the black matter on the wall, and secretly said, "This is really troublesome." Seeing Yinga's sudden attack, Ziluo and other angels reacted and raised their flaming swords one after another. The sacred inscriptions on the sword's spine glowed with red flames, and then streams of red flames or sword energy flew towards the still growing figure. On the black substance, violent explosions continued to rise, but they could not stop the expansion of the black material. Even the top of the hall was burst by it. Finally, the squirming black material began to condense and compress. What finally appeared in front of Hika and the angel was a terrifying monster with skin covered in black horny scales, a body over 50 meters long, 6 arms and 4 legs, and an unusually ferocious face. However, judging from his asymmetrical body shape and face, he does not have the beauty of a naturally evolved creature at all, and his whole body is full of traces of haphazard patchwork. The muscles in the corner of Hika's eyes twitched, and he called up the intelligence system to see which safes stored what materials were destroyed this time and were exploited by the Chaos virus. This is the shortcut that Hika has found through practice to defeat the special Chaos body. Canster, who has turned into a Chaos virus, will destroy the material storage vault in the Institute, and then use the materials inside as a matrix for the Chaos virus to transform and utilize. Most of them were samples of relatively deadly beasts and some animal civilizations before, but the big man in front of them obviously exceeded the storage volume of ordinary samples. Soon the intelligence system retrieved the safe that had been destroyed in the past few minutes and the material data stored inside. It glanced at the information on several special metal and material samples stored in front of it, and Hika's sight finally stopped at the last one. The front end is marked with top secret information. I saw that the file name showed Titan Lord God Living Tissue Sample Collection Location Titan God Realm Titan Planet. It's not good, Hika was thinking at this moment. He had a deep understanding of the power of the Titan Lord God, who had participated in the final battle of the physical war. It was like a moving natural disaster, a kind of power that could not be matched. Even now that he has become the war god of the Thunderblade civilization, it cannot change the terrifying image of the Titan Lord in his mind. In fact, just as he thought, the moment the huge monster took shape, a terrifying blue electric light flashed in the heart of its large mouth that roared and opened from time to time. At the same time, as a war god, Hika's special perception ability allowed Hika to discover that the surrounding magnetic field had been distorted to a certain extent, which meant that some weapons that relied on simple magnetic field compression energy technology as a means of attack had lost their effect. Boom! The giant palm covered with black scales smacked down, causing part of the metal floor of the hall to collapse. The transformation warriors under Hika didn't care about confronting the angel, and quickly spread out to avoid falling into the collapse area. But this giant monster transformed by the Chaos virus has agility that is incompatible with its huge body. The big hand slapped it repeatedly, and the terrifying force made the entire hall's skeleton groan under the load, and the ground seemed to the next moment it will collapse and fall into the lower level. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Super Seminary Angel Binghua. Author, Shifeng Si Wang. Chapter 454. Several reformed warriors who were lagging behind were unstable due to the continuous vibrations, and they could only hear the sound of metal twisting. Immediately afterwards, the metal floor under their feet failed to hold up and tilted backwards. Before they could make any other moves, a giant hand fell down. When the giant hand was removed again, the transformed warriors and the metal floor beneath their feet had disappeared. Yinga and other angels who were originally watching the show were also affected by the attack of the chaotic monster, but now, there is no longer a problem of exposing their identities. A scorching red light flashed through the small gaps on the surface of the silver-gray armor. The armor that was tightly attached to the bodies of Yinga and other angels fell off in an instant, revealing the beautiful body wearing a white dress inside. However, in an instant, the silver angel armor just covered the scenery tightly. The white wings spread out behind them, and Yinga and the other 5 angels turned into a few after images and flew out. Among them, the female angel captain raised the flaming sword after flying to a suitable height. The energy-driven formula about flaming bombing flashed in her mind. The dark energy extracted and transformed by the gene engine was instilled into the sword in her hand, activating the weapons in the sword grid. The engine, and then the terrifying photothermal radiation was compressed into a burning red light that was almost like liquid flame, flying around the blade. The next moment, the angel captain swooped down with his sword, and the gorgeous light in the air exploded, forming a gradually spreading ring of fire. One of the monster's arms used to support its body was blown into 2 pieces on the spot and fell to the lower level. The other angels were not left behind. Holding flaming swords, they possessed terrifying firepower at the battleship level. Several huge explosions of fire appeared on the monster's body. The terrifying shockwave swept in all directions, which undoubtedly increased the pressure that the monster and its various limbs had to bear. In the monster's unwilling roar, its huge body fell to the next level. This gave Hika and his party, who had been eager to avoid monster attacks, finally time to reintegrate the team. But Yinga and other angels suspended in the sky did not look too happy. With the harsh sound of breaking through the air, more than a dozen black tentacles shot out from the place where the monster fell, and easily nailed into the alloy dome at the top. The huge monster that quickly fell to the lower level was dragged by the dense tentacles on its body and returned to the level where Hika and others were. Suddenly it opened its mouth toward the sky, and a blue-white strip of lightning several meters wide shot out. And out. The monster's sudden lightning breath swept across, beyond the expectations of Yinga and other angels. The two high-level angels who were closer to the monster were unable to avoid it. They fell to the ground with lightning all over their bodies and were unable to get up for a while. Yinga and other angels were fighting to the death at the front, but Hika unexpectedly did not run away. Instead, he ordered his reformed warriors to build fire power points on the spot and conduct cover shooting. The monster hit by the metal barrage kept shaking its head and tail. At the same time, the erosion damage caused by the explosion of corrosive missiles was also constantly reducing the monster's skin and body tissues. At this moment, the lights on the walls around the battlefield suddenly went out, and the armor on Hika projected a light curtain, which showed that the energy supply of the Institute had been systematically destroyed, and more than 90% of the Institute's facilities, paralyzed due to lack of energy supply. At the same time, the erosion speed of the chaos virus veins that had originally spread to the battlefield suddenly increased by a notch, dyeing the surrounding alloy walls black at a speed visible to the naked eye. The huge monster that was blasted by Yinga and other angels and Hika didn't know what happened. After spitting out a burst of scattered lightning, it suddenly retreated. When Yinga and the other angels were about to catch up and melt the giant deformed monster with flame bombs, the harmless chaotic virus material clinging to the wall suddenly moved. Groups of bulges appeared on the wall covered with a layer of chaotic virus tissue, and turned into tentacles as thick as an arm in less than 3 seconds. In just an instant, a sea of black tentacles appeared in front of Yinga and other angels. At the same time, tissue with a red glimmer flowing inside like blood vessels was generated inside the chaotic virus tissue on the wall. Its structure was quite strange. The style is as if the angels are currently in the body of some giant creature. This scene made Yinga and other angels feel extremely disgusted, and they couldn't help but distance themselves from the area. But what made their expressions freeze was that the areas eroded by the chaos virus were quickly moving toward their location. Spread. Suddenly a thick arc of blue energy flashed, and the next moment dazzling white light and heat suddenly bloomed. At some point, Hika appeared in the area eroded by the chaos virus with a dagger wrapped in blue energy. At his feet was a layer of black infected tissue that had turned to ashes. I am the power of Leo, Canster cannot defeat me with these alone. A low, roaring sound echoed in the hall, accompanied by tiny energy silos spreading around Hika like a power grid. But unfortunately, no one responded, only roars came from behind the drooping sea of tentacles. Yinga and others looked around and understood the reason why Hika did not take the opportunity to lead his subordinates to escape. It was because at some point the walls and floors in all directions were eroded by the chaos virus, and various weird and twisted organizations blocked the passages. A chaotic body whose original appearance was unknown also poured out from the remaining passage and was massacring the men previously led by Hika. Seeing that Hika's attack was effective on the area eroded by the chaos virus, Yinga and other angels also followed suit. The flaming sword bloomed with a red halo, spewing out a torrent of flames formed by high-intensity light and heat, burning the spread. Black matter. However, chaos virus quickly took measures to deal with it. The huge monster that was previously transformed by Angel and Hika's blaster broke out of the sea of tentacles and reappeared. The original ferocious patchwork head disappeared and was replaced by three beastly heads with somewhat elongated necks. The scales on the body and legs disappeared and were instead covered with a thick layer of black horny armor. As soon as this transformed chaos monster appeared on the scene, it couldn't wait to show off its new abilities to everyone present. Three thick ribbons of lightning spurted out from the mouths of the three beast heads, cutting and shooting in all directions in this small space. The dozen transformed warriors who survived under Hika's protection were swept away by ribbon lightning and turned into charred, carbonized corpses on the spot, which made Hika roar with extreme anger. Even Yinga and other angels in the air did not dare to stay at will. They could only rely on their own mobility and use the flaming sword to launch low-intensity long-range attacks. As for Hika, he can only withstand the bombardment of ribbon lightning. However, as a god of war, his physical strength is quite tough. Coupled with the extremely destructive Leo energy, apart from being a little embarrassed, he will not be there for the time being. Danger to life. Super Seminary Angel Binghua. Author, Shifeng Si Wang. Chapter 455. Finally, when the surrounding chaos virus erosion area was about to spread to the hall where Yinga and the others were located, which was connected to the upper and lower floors, the female angel captain, who was the leader of the team, finally couldn't bear it anymore. Yinga, we can't go on like this. The surroundings are blocked by the chaos virus. Even if we force a passage, the monster will not give us this chance. I remember, didn't the Queen give you a secret weapon before carrying out this mission? Flashing past the streak of lightning, Ziluo also echoed. It's Yinga. It's time now, so don't hide it. The Queen gave it to you for use in this situation. Yinga's expression changed, and finally she said in a deep voice, "Okay, you guys cover me." After saying that, Yinga stepped back, and the other four angels who had been avoiding the attack in the air stood in front of him. The monster did not give up this great opportunity. In addition to one head that kept spitting out ribbon lightning at Hika, the other two heads turned around and spewed out ribbon lightning at the angels gathered together in the air. The palms of their hands touched the sacred inscriptions on the sword, and then several angels erected the sword in front of them as a shield, using their other arm to support the upper part of the sword. The next moment, terrifying ribbon lightning shot out, but it was blocked by the small protective force field on the flaming sword and spread out to the surroundings, forming a spectacular spider-like grid. This is one of the many auxiliary functions of the flaming sword. It can be used as a small force field shield in emergencies to reduce the energy impact damage suffered by oneself. But the flaming sword itself is not a weapon that pays attention to protection, so the few angels who were covering Yinga were quickly blown away by ribbon lightning, and fell to the ground with lightning all over their bodies. If it weren't for the physical strength of high-level angels, which is several times stronger than metal, and the super gene given to angels by He-11, it has been upgraded to resist energy erosion. Just when they were hit by ribbon lightning, the angels would lose their ability to fight even if they were not seriously injured, instead of being slightly injured and temporarily paralyzed like now. However, the short time that the angels bought was enough for Yinga to carry out the device that was dubbed the secret weapon. The slender triangular double-pointed pillar, which was nearly 1 meter long and had countless small sacred inscriptions printed on it, was activated in Yinga's hands and automatically floated forward. At the same time, the ribbon lightning had already broken through the defense lines of several angels and struck at the thing blocking their way. But the next moment, as countless small sacred inscriptions on the double-pointed triangular prisms lit up, a huge energy impact spread out to the surroundings, scattering the incoming ribbon lightning on the spot. The chaos virus that originally eroded the ground walls also stopped eroding due to this sudden energy impact. As for the three-headed chaotic monster closest to the double-pointed triangular prism, it was staggered backward by the energy impact. Traces of space distortion representing space transportation appear above the square-pointed triangular prism, and countless complicated red lines together create the image of a broad-edged longsword. In just a few seconds, a broad-blade longsword with a silver mane color and sparse black decorative patterns on the sword's spine and grid was carried out. The first thought that came to the minds of the angels at this moment was that the secret weapon the queen mentioned was not a sword. But it was obvious that their queen would not make such a joke. As the sacred inscriptions on the hanging sword lit up, the light began to gather, first condensing a pair of silver angel boots, and then a red back skirt. The silver metal skirt around the waist, the breastplate and the cloak, and finally the beautiful face that has been listed on the files of dangerous people in various civilizations. Binghua looked around, his eyes lit up with a faint white light, and he used dark information scanning to analyze the surrounding environment. Binghua, who was suspended in the air for a few seconds, closed her eyes, and then opened them again. Her eyes first fell on Hika, who looked very embarrassed below, because this was the fighting god of the Divine River civilization at the same level as her. The second generation of Leo's power project draws on some of the characteristics of Kamigawa's blade, Kamigawa's god of war, and Kamigawa's light. It uses the corrosion enhancement effect of dark energy combined with the special rare energy discovered by your thunder blade to form the power of Leo is used as the main output energy and attack method. The idea is good, but the consequence of focusing too much is that it inherits none of the characteristics. It does not have the energy shaping of the blade of Kamigawa, nor the indestructible body of the god of Kamigawa. Even the energy matrix of the light of Kamigawa and the final basic bunching algorithms are not supported. Hika on the ground looked up at the figure above her head who was dressed much more luxuriously than ordinary angels. A name that was listed as a key target of attention by major civilizations came to mind. One of the four angel kings in the past, and now the holy left-winger under the king of angels, the highest authority in the angel civilization, the heavenly sword king Binghua. This series of titles on the surface at best makes people think that the female angel in front of them has a noble status, but in fact, this female angel also has some titles that are circulated in private. The angel goddess of war, the god of killing, the god-killing angel, etc. have several titles, and in the beast body civilization, there are many notorious names such as the destroyer of civilization, the king of winged demons, and the destroyer of worlds. Seeing that Hika had no intention of replying, Binghua shifted his gaze boredly and focused on the chaos virus-infected body that occupied a large area of vision and the mutated wall tissue. Chaos virus. No matter how many times I see you, I always find it extremely annoying that you won't give up until you swallow everything up. Binghua's eyes became dangerous. As he spoke, the void beside him rippled, and a black sword was gradually carried into shape. What responded to Binghua's words was the roar of the chaos-infected body. 3 beast heads were seen opening their mouths, and wisps of electric light flashed in their throats. Just when they were about to spit out ribbon lightning, a black sword came out of the air. Falling down, half of the sword blade pierced the cuticle carapace on its back. The chaotic monster didn't pay attention to this damage at all, and continued to prepare attacks, the blue lightning in its mouth getting stronger and stronger. Binghua stretched out her finger and touched the void in front of her. In the operation interface that only she could see, the command content loaded was as follows. The surrounding space data collection has been completed, and the high-intensity gravity field has been activated, with a range of 100 meters centered on the core of the sword. There was a buzzing and creaking sound in the air, like fried beans, and all objects in an area of 100 radius centered on the 3-headed chaos monster began to twist downwards. Among them, the objects located at this distance boundary, whether it is an alloy floor with a thickness of several meters or a metal frame exuding a cold hard metallic luster, are all bent downward by nearly 90 degrees, and some parts that are relatively closely connected are connected with each other. The entire body was dragged downward by the sudden and terrifying gravity field. As the largest 3-headed chaos monster, needless to say, the ribbon lightning spitting out of its mouth was pressed by the gravity field into an ups and downs line. It could not escape the scope of the gravity field at all, and it even collapsed 2 layers of it. The floor was pressed to the ground and unable to move. Super Seminary Angel Binghua. Author, Shifeng Si Wang. Chapter 456. When the 3 chaotic monsters were pressed to the bottom by the high-intensity gravity field and unable to move, Binghua's attention shifted to the chaotic virus tissue on the wall of the research institute. After observing for a few seconds and comparing the huge data in the Angel database with the various types of chaos viruses that the Angels had encountered, Binghua soon came up with an answer. The chaos virus here has entered the end of the 2nd phase. By the middle of the 3rd phase, it will soon become a biological mothership that can span the sea of stars and integrate manufacturing, production, and self-sufficiency. However, according to the data obtained by Binghua through dark information scanning, the chaos virus here is obviously more mutated and adaptable than the virus found in the Angel Nebula, and it seems to have been artificially cultivated. Because the chaos virus here is assimilating this research institute with a width of more than 50 kilometers in diameter, the original internal passages and rooms have been eroded by the chaos virus, forming embryonic cultivation chambers for producing chaos bodies. The alloy walls have been assimilated into internal scaffolds and biological skeletons by modern science and technology, and those things like blood vessels that continuously transport red shimmering liquid within the black tissues are energy transmission pipes used to maintain various chambers. As for those dense tentacles and various twisted and weird structures, most of them are internal biological defense organs. While Binghua was reading the scanned data, the ripples in the space around her did not disappear. A dozen silver swords with the same style and simple shape were carried out immediately after the broad-blade sword used to suppress the 3-headed chaos monster. At the same time, in the sky above Binghua's back, there was a half-silver metal ring dotted with several blue prismatic crystals, which was being transported out of the micro-wormhole little by little. I saw more than a dozen silver rays shooting down from Binghua's position, piercing into the front of the chaos virus erosion area in 4 directions. Then a burning red light lit up from the sword body, and then the sword body automatically moved sideways, and the thick alloy floor and frame were easily cut through the scattered sparks. There was only a banging sound, and a piece of ground covering an area of more than 30,000 square meters fell into the lower level. There was still an uncooled orange-red fire at the incision. The erosion of the chaos virus had to be stopped due to the lack of carriers. Although this temporarily curbed its expansion, it only treated the symptoms but not the root cause. But as Binghua, who had formulated a plan to eradicate the chaos virus, he naturally knew the advantages and disadvantages of this virus. Binghua suddenly spoke up and gave instructions in a very calm tone to several high-level angels who were watching the show suspended in the air not far away. Stop watching there and prepare to execute the heavenly blade judgment. These viruses are afraid of the instantaneous high temperature. I have some problems that need to be solved first, and I can't make calculations like Sky Blade trial for the time being, so I'll leave it to you first. The most frightening thing about the chaos virus is its seemingly limitless variability. If the chaos virus cannot be eliminated at once, they will soon mutate into corresponding biological defense structures. Only large-scale instantaneous ultra-high temperature incineration like Sky Blade Judgment can destroy the chaos viruses before they mutate into coping structures. The several high-ranking angels who were watching their queen display her power and suppress powerful enemies with a wave of her hands all looked solemn upon hearing this. Then Yinga and Ziluo found a more suitable height without hesitation and raised the flaming sword high. The remaining 3 high-level female angels, including the female angel captain, only hesitated for a moment before launching the Sky Blade Judgment. A scorching red halo rose up from the sword, and the sacred inscriptions engraved on the sword's spine emitted a bright light. The dark energy scattered in the surrounding space is frantically extracted by the high-level female angel's gene engine, then quickly transformed, and poured into the sword through the palm to activate the dense internal energy circuit. These energies are uniformly deployed by the weapon engine at the sword grid, and run according to the preset Sky Blade Judgment function distribution. Among them are micro force fields that are responsible for constraining energy and preventing it from spreading, primers that activate and guide fusion atomic energy, and dark energy mixing ratios that enhance the intensity of atomic energy. These complex formulas are all handed over to the weapon engine for calculation and coordination, and the angel warriors only need to pay attention to changes in energy and surrounding environmental problems to prevent the calculation formula from being unable to continue running due to lack of energy, because these are changing all the time. As a dead thing, the weapon engine cannot process it autonomously. The dark hall, filled with black chaos viruses and tentacles of deformed tissue, suddenly ushered in a burst of blazing light. The dazzling light of 5 miniature stars slowly rose in a space of less than 200,000 cubic meters, and the blazing light burned everything in the hall. The pool of blood spilled on the ground in the previous battle emitted sizzling smoke and was quickly evaporated, leaving a pool of red and black dry residue on the spot. As for the chaos virus, which was originally afraid of light and heat, it also began to curl up under the heat of this light, and the black tissue on the surface began to harden rapidly to block external light and heat. Binghua was carrying a series of platinum long swords that didn't look sharp but had a very luxurious appearance. These platinum swords are engraved with magnificent patterns and small sacred words. They are more like symbols used by the king to show their identity than weapons used for fighting. However, the number of dozens of them around Binghua lowered the preciousness of these platinum swords by more than one level. Binghua, who was setting up a defensive barrier, glanced at the dark passage that was 10 meters apart on one side. He stayed for a moment and then looked away. But as subtle movements were heard, dozens of reptilian creatures with slender bodies and nearly half-meter-long spikes on their heads suddenly sprang out of the dark passage. They turned into dozens of black after-images and flew through the air, heading straight towards the ice flower suspended in mid-air. When Yinga and other angels, who were preparing for the heavenly blade trial, saw this scene, they felt very anxious and wanted to rush over to block the queen's side. But if the sky blade trial in the middle of the process were to leave the restraints of the execution angel, it would probably explode immediately, causing a chain reaction. 5 consecutive explosions of the sky blade trial in such a small space would be absolutely delicious. Quite sour and refreshing. Just when the group of black after-images were less than 5 meters away from the ice flower, a ray consisting of several entangled blue energy rays came across and hit one of the black shadows, exploding violently, and the energy image spread. It was like a spreading fishing net, covering several other black shadows around it. This attack was launched by Hika on the ground. It was one of his trump cards. However, due to haste, he was unable to stop all the black shadows. He could only watch the remaining 2 black shadows collide. To Binghua, who seems to be unaware. But what happened next moment made both the angels and Hika present look surprised. Because the black shadow that hit Binghua passed directly through her body, and before they could turn around and move the platinum sword floating around them, it was cut into pieces on the spot. It's actually a phantom. Hika below said in surprise. In his perception, the location of Binghua was filled with a powerful dark energy field. Its intensity even distorted part of the space. He had always thought that the King of Heavenly Sword had crossed countless light years later. The true body has arrived. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Super Seminary Angel Binghua. Author, Shifeng Si Wang. Chapter 457. Don't stop, continue to carry out the Sky Blade Judgment. These inferior things can't hurt your queen. As Binghua spoke, he raised his arms and stretched them to both sides. The platinum sword that was floating quietly around him emitted a faint orange-red light, began to rotate clockwise around it, and finally spread out in all directions around it. Finally, he looked down at Hika, who was sitting on a wreckage below. With a thought, a platinum sword made a clanging sound and was inserted into the floor in front of Hika. After this period of brewing, the 5 angels finally completed the energy storage of the Skyblade Judgment and can carry out bombing at any time. After you execute the Skyblade Judgment, remember to retreat to the Platinum Sword array I set up. They can prevent you from being hurt by my own attacks. After receiving the order, Yinga and the other 5 angels no longer hesitated, and the flaming sword they raised suddenly fell towards the surrounding chaos virus. The next moment, a waterfall of orange-red light and heat flooded the hall where the angels were. The broken alloy walls at the edges melted in an instant, and then the raging orange-red storm quickly spread to other surrounding areas. Whether it is the erosion area of the chaos virus or the alloy skeleton of the research institute, facing the oncoming ultra-high temperature, they will only end up being burned to ashes. Outside, the main body of the Artast Research Institute is located within a giant asteroid. Except for a few insignificant structures that are exposed, most of the remaining main body is protected by a reinforced rock layer. Due to the outbreak of the chaos virus, part of the army forces of the Kamigawa Tiendeo and the Gulans on the attacking side were trapped inside the research institute. Adhering to the principle of saving one person at a time, the 2 major civilizations dispatched squads and small transport ships composed of elite combat forces for rescue. After a certain period of time, the rescue team also made some gains and rescued many trapped people. At this moment, the large warships of the 2 major civilizations were docked near the outer wall of the research institute, receiving the rescued personnel. Don't crowd me. Everyone can board the ship. The medical staff maintaining the team are working hard to maintain order as they conduct simple infection tests for each rescued person. There were many people in the queue with broken arms and legs being held up by their companions, but they had all undergone simple treatment, so there was no need to worry about their injuries getting worse. At the front of the team, a pale and weak-looking man was quietly looking around nervously. His name is Tarkin, and he is an interstellar infantryman belonging to the Gulan civilization. He is a little nervous now because he was previously the unit responsible for blocking the chaos body within the Artast Research Institute. He was knocked unconscious by a monster during the battle. When he woke up again, his companions and monsters had disappeared without a trace. Only he was still at the scene unscathed, but his body had become very weak and he could not help himself. What kind of effort? Next. Yes, it's you, come here quickly, there are a lot of people waiting behind you. The doctor in charge of testing for the virus woke Taken out of his daze and quickly took a few steps forward to get onto the temporarily assembled testing table. When the medical staff operating the equipment saw Taken standing up, he pressed the test button, and a green light swept from Taken's head to the base of his feet. The doctor in charge of the test first looked at the results on the screen which showed that everything was normal. Then he looked up at Taken's pale and weak face and felt something was wrong. But in a blink of an eye, I thought that it might be the soldier's weak physique and some kind of stimulation that made him like this, so he signaled to the soldiers on the other side who were responsible for maintaining order to let him go. Telkin breathed a sigh of relief and entered the room assigned to him under the guidance of the guide. After sitting on the bed in a daze for a while, Taken felt sleepy and finally fell directly onto the bed. In his chest, some of the internal organs began to change to a degree visible to the naked eye, and they began to split towards the surroundings. Black substances were produced one after another, and abnormal organs with unknown functions were quickly formed. Of course, Taken's body shape did not change at all from the appearance. The changes in Tarkin inside the battleship were not noticed by anyone, because something more worthy of attention happened at this moment. In the middle of the Artast Research Institute, which was surrounded by the asteroid rock layer, countless cracks suddenly appeared, and a ray of fire shone through. The ordinary soldiers at the entrance hatch of the battleship were just curious about what was going on there, but the alarms in the battleship were already ringing. A powerful energy source has been detected nearby, please evacuate all ships immediately. But before the personnel in the bridge could react, the asteroid rock layer with cracks suddenly exploded, and a dazzling orange-red flame spurted out, followed by a violent explosion and a ring-like impact. The wave sweep pushed the battleships back and moved a certain distance. Countless soldiers and medical staff near the battleship's hatch screamed and were swept into space by the impact and floated into the distance. 10 seconds later, the flames generated by the explosion began to slowly fade away, revealing a terrifying hole several kilometers in diameter with stars and fire shining inside. The huge heat that failed to escape in time accumulated together, so that the two major civilizations observed through optical equipment could only see a blurry image. But the explosion just now was like a switch. Countless black substances poured out from the inside of the ATIST Research Institute, forming veins of more than 10 meters, covering the exposed parts of the research institute. Afterwards, pieces of rock shattered, and giant black claws, tentacles, and bone wings broke out of the stone one after another. Each of these weird limbs was larger than a main battleship. What was finally revealed in front of the two major civilizations was a terrifying giant with a body length of more than 50 kilometers, which was formed by the fusion of the Research Institute and the Black Chaos virus. Its head at the front was very weird, with no sense of symmetry at all. It's like a substandard product that was casually needed by someone. However, no one would think that the giant chaotic monster that appeared in this appearance was weak, because the Gulen's battleship, which was crushed into a twisted metal mass by one of its claws, was proof of its power. Have you entered the third stage? It's really fast. In a spherical space formed by dozens of transparent light golden barriers, Binghua spoke. Yinga on the side asked curiously, "Queen, what are these things that protect us?" Binghua replied with a slight smile on his face. It's just a miniature space-time deflection shield technology. These platinum swords are used as nodes for shield generation devices. While speaking, Binghua raised his palm slightly, and the surrounding platinum swords immediately put away their shields, and gradually turned into particles and disappeared, and was carried back to the weapons depot by Binghua. But the next moment, Binghua's eyebrows frowned slightly, because he was disconnected from the weapon engine of a platinum sword, and he sighed as he looked at the huge hole below. What a shame. Super Seminary Angel Binghua. Author, Shifeng Si Wang. Chapter 458. After lamenting that another war god had fallen before his eyes, Binghua focused his attention on the small stargate behind him that had been completely carried out. Energy supply is normal, space coordinates have been positioned, and the cross-galaxy jump channel has been constructed. As this series of work completion information appeared, a light blue light appeared in the middle of the silver semicircular metal ring that was 2 meters wide and 2.5 meters high, floating slightly like running water. Binghua's figure also began to fade and disappear at this time, leaving behind a long sword with a slight black pattern on the blade, but her voice did not disappear with her body. This is a one-time miniature stargate through which you can return to the Angel Nebula. As for what happened here, you don't have to worry about it. I believe Kamigawa Tiendeo and the Gulensi people will handle it well. After leaving such a message, the long sword, which served as a base station for intergalactic data docking, also began to slowly decompose, and was reversely transported back to the weapons depot by the recycling function in the sword body. After Yinga and other angels looked at each other, they quickly entered the miniature stargate. After all the angels entered, the miniature stargate also began to reverse transportation. In the end, only a single silver double-pointed triangular prism was left in place, having exhausted its energy and floating there like garbage in the universe. The technique of reverse transport can be said to be one of Binghua's most proud works in recent years, and it is good news for all angels who like to throw weapons around. As long as this function is installed on the weapon in advance, the weapon can be automatically transported back to the weapons depot through the wormhole when contact with the owner is lost. This technology is also called reverse transport technology by Binghua. This technology itself is not complicated, and has been mercilessly criticized by Liang Bing for being low-level and without technical content. However, It is very practical and can be used by the entire angel legion, allowing the first-line angels who are still using war spears to warriors like it very much because they don't have to worry about finding the spear after it is thrown out. By the time Yinga and his 5 angels returned to Merlot heaven, the Oran War had come to an end. The Thunderblade civilization declared its defeat, and the Thunder Star Territory Alliance was dismembered by the victorious Kamigawa Tiendao and the Gulans. However, as allies who had fought together in the physical war, and taking into account the principle of Kamigawa Academy, space, who was still wandering in the universe, Gulansi and Kamigawa Tiendao did not kill the Thunderblade civilization. However, it limited the armaments and development scale of the Thunderblade civilization, causing the Thunderblade civilization, which was originally at the forefront of the new Kamigawa galaxy's first line of military strength, to fall to the bottom of the second line. Among them, the Thunderblade King was publicly executed for war crimes. The social structure was also forced to change due to the interference of the Gulans and Kamigawa Tiendao, from the original royal dictatorship to a parliamentary system. If nothing else goes wrong, the 2 victorious parties will definitely place their own people in the parliament to act as troublemakers to slow down the recovery of Thunderblade civilization, or completely make it lose the possibility of returning to the first-line civilization. Binghua only obtained the information on the transformed warriors 1 month after the incident at the Artast Research Institute. At the same time, Liang Bing, who was the assistant to the King of Angels, also obtained information on transforming warriors, because among the angels who went to perform the mission, Anya was her subordinate. Although she was now under Binghua's command sequence, it doesn't mean that Liang Bing can't exert influence on Anya. As for the team leader, he was called by Kesha, the King of Angels, and told the details of the operation. Binghua was very open-minded about this and did not feel offended at all. Instead, he started research after obtaining the technical information on transforming soldiers. He 11 has also heard about the modified warriors of Thunderblade civilization for a long time, but as a master of supergenetic technology, she is not interested in this basic human body modification technology. A month later, Binghua was lying on a chair, gently flipping through some data that he had summarized in recent times with his fingers. The principle of Thunderblade's transformation of warriors is actually very simple. It treats the human body as a machine and uses metal bones and artificial organs to replace the more fragile parts of the human body. However, there is a problem that is difficult to solve with this technology, which is the rejection of mechanical and artificial organs by the organism, and the inability of the physical body to function. For example, for a normal Kamigawa person, if the internal bones of the body are replaced with metal bones, in addition to physical rejection, there will also be symptoms such as stiffness of movement, increased physical exertion, and dizziness. And if special metals that are not rejected by the human body are used, the cost of modification will increase exponentially. The ideas of Thunderblade civilization scientists are extremely innovative. They use the Chaos virus obtained from the Angel Nebula as a human body enhancer. They also use the variability of the virus to transform the body of the warrior and the artificial intelligence inside the body. There will be no rejection of organs and alloy bones. This reduces the cost of surgical modification of modified warriors to an extremely low level, making mass production possible. What disappoints Binghua is that the virus used by the Thunderblade stars to transform warrior technology is not the Chaos virus, but an artificially castrated version of the Chaos virus created based on its characteristics. Although this castrated version of the virus has been stripped of its infectivity, since most of its genes are derived from the Chaos virus, its useful life is extremely short, and it will gradually transform into a Chaos virus after a certain period of time. At that time, the reformed warriors will become puppets of the Chaos virus, turning into hideous and twisted terrifying monsters. In the end, this technology was sealed in the angel database by Binghua, and was set so that only angels with the sacred wings level could view it. The reason for being so solemn is that this technology is very dangerous, and if you are not careful, you may create an infection area of chaos virus. Sister Kesha, are you looking for me? Binghua opened the golden door and walked into Kesha's private office, a room that was luxuriously decorated but simple in furnishings. Kesha motioned for Binghua to sit down first, then sorted out the projection documents in front of her, and then said with a smile. I heard that as soon as the team you sent to the Kamigawa Galaxy came back, you stayed in the experiment. This makes me embarrassed to disturb you recently. Binghua just smiled, relaxed his body and leaned on the seat. His posture was very casual, and he didn't have any consciousness that this was the office of the King of Angels. Kesha won't be angry about this. As a king, she is actually very lonely. Many angels who were once close to Kesha took the initiative to distance themselves from each other because of their differences in status. Only Binghua, Liangbing, and Hexi will not be separated by Kesha's identity. Okay, I know you don't like this, so I won't talk nonsense. The reason why I am looking for you urgently is because of the intergalactic information transmission and reception technology you used when supporting the Artast Research Institute.